Thank you, Glenda. We'd be lost without the cross. Amen. Love that. Good word this morning. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, musicians. A good day got in God's house already. If you see me, if you need a deposit, if you're here this morning, I've got your deposit, whether you need it or not. So for the Golden Air trip that we were going to take to Mayberry Days and Billy Graham Library that we just decided to put a hiatus to. So see me, Leanne and I, or Leanne, either one of us have those. Mitch, if you'll see me afterwards too, I'll fill you in briefly with our conversation where we can go ahead and make a decision on that. The chairman's at the beach, but we're gonna handle that decision, get something made so we can get that taken care of. Lindsay. Brian's wife, so Brian probably didn't feel like he could mention Lizzie, but she hasn't had the baby by Friday. The plan is to have the baby this Friday. And so praying for you, Lindsay. And that's a very, very good day, July 31st. We're praying that'll work out. What's good about that day, Liam? Happy anniversary, baby, right? Isn't it good to be in God's house? Stand with me, y'all. Stand with me. Here's what I want you to do. I've overloaded the booth, but they're prepared. They feel like they got it, but I have to get them a lot. I want you to go to Hebrews 11. That's where we're going to begin this morning. We're still in our series on faith. We're at the parting of the Red Sea, the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea, and the miracle deliverance. And then we're going to spend most of the message in Exodus 13 and 14. The verses are going to be on the screen, but I'd love for you to hang with me because there's a couple that I've added here as I've sat around this morning that I'm going to read. So I'd love for you to open your Bibles, turn there. Andrea, as I was thinking, Andrea shared about the memory of the verses, hiding God's word in our heart. Remember Nat Johnson? Raise your hand if you remember our saint, godly Nat. Nat used to tell me all the time he would sit right around where Bob and Mary Ann are sitting back in the day, and he would tell me, Tim, lost his sight later in life as far as the ability to read. He would say many times when you would mention the verses, it's like I could see it right there. And he could follow it with me, knew what I was going to read, and knew it because he had hid God's word in his heart. He wasn't bragging, but he was talking about how wonderful God would give him recall of God's word. So hide God's word in your heart. Hebrews 11, verse 29. It was by faith. I've got a new living for most everything this morning. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground. But when the Egyptians tried to follow, they were all drowned. Father, I pray you'd help me as I've asked you these past few weeks, these familiar stories, these familiar passages. I pray you'd help me to convey the nuggets of truth that you've confirmed and reaffirmed and shown me in my heart as I prepared the messages. I pray that would be the case today. Thank you for your faithfulness. We remind you of those we've called out who need you. We add Lindsay to that list and their new baby who is coming this Friday. Father, we pray our favor for them. We pray your blessing on them. And even as we open your word, we pray again, it would prove to be a lamp to our feet, a light to our path this day and this week. And we ask it in Christ's name. And all God's people said, amen. You may be seated. 5 points that are going to be part of all these verses we're going to look at this morning to go along with this great story of the miracle deliverance of the faith expressed by Moses and the children of Israel this morning. The first point is this, the plan. All of these are going to be a P. The plan. God had a plan. God has a plan. Can I remind you, whatever's going on, God has a plan. Whatever is happening, God has a plan. And this was a huge plan. And we're going to look at it in a few little aspects in this first point. The Israelites had been slaves for 430 years in bondage in Egypt, part of God's plan. At the end of this moment, we've just been made aware and been reminded of the great 10 plagues that God used to deliver the nation of Israel from Egypt, culminating with Passover night. And as they're going, they're leaving. Exodus 12 tells us that the people of Egypt are giving them silver, gold, clothing, and food. If you take time later to read chapter 12, God has so blessed and ordained this moment. The people of Egypt are asking the Israelites as they leave to bless them because they recognize they serve a mighty God. So part of God's plan has been. So I just pause here to remind you. It's not always just God's plan when He's blessing. Sometimes when we're in a challenging spot, it's just as much God's plan as those mountaintop moments. He is watching over them even as He watches over us today. Go to Exodus chapter 13 with me. It's going to be on the screen if you want to follow it here. Verse 21 and 22 is where we'll begin. Just to remind you of some of the familiar things about this story. I want us to just be reminded of what all took place from leaving Egypt to getting to the Red Sea. Verse 21 and 22 tell us that part of God's plan was to lead the children of Israel by a cloud by day and fire by night. Verse 21 and 22, the Lord went ahead of them. He guided them during the day with a pillar of cloud and provided a light at night with a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel by day or night. And the Lord did not remove the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire from its place in front of the people. So from the moment they left Egypt to where they end up at the Red Sea, God is leading. It's as if God was saying, more than any other time, you need my presence. And He is going to be a very real presence to them throughout this sojourn they're going to be on for many years. When the cloud moved, they moved. When the fire moved, they moved. When the cloud stopped, they stopped. Been walking with the Lord a lot of years now, and I've often thought how awesome it would be to just look and to know it's time to move and it's time to stop. Part of the challenge and the blessing of walking with God is the struggle and the yearning and the calling out to Him to hear from Him on when to move and when to stop. And even without clouds and fire, it's been my blessing to watch many young and not so young move when God said move. And stop when God said stop. It shows how keenly God is able to make us aware of what He wants us to do at any time in our life. The second part about this plan that struck out to me was how unfamiliar this journey must have been. Can you imagine in bondage for 400 plus years? Dreaming from deliverance, for what deliverance would look like. And then it arrives. It's in my mind's, in my heart's eye, it's got to seem a little scary still. Unfamiliar. Every time I've done something that's somewhat unfamiliar, as much as even the positive, most positive things, it's been a little bit of trepidation going through that door. First baby showed up at our house. We had 9 months to get ready. Had the baby, things went well, fast delivery. Even though I was worn out, Leanne, we made it through, didn't we? Both of us. I want you to feel for Brian this week, Lindsay. I want you to. But you know when the reality of how unfamiliar this journey was set in with me? Not at the hospital. When we loaded up Dallas and headed home and pulled into 3990 Spencer Circle, I thought, what are we going to do with this baby? This was, you read, you planned, people have done it, you assume it's just pretty easy. But I'm telling you, them first few nights with Dallas were, first 6 months with Dallas. Colicky, challenging, wonderful though. Grammar school, then middle school, high school, as much as we look forward to those transitions a little bit. I remember I was part of the first class that went through integration in Macon, Georgia. From 71 to 76 was the first full class, 8th grade to the 12th grade. So Jesse Rice, they took us out to Ballard Bead because they recognized it was going to be a pretty unfamiliar transition for us. Not just because we were going to what was then called junior high school, but we were going to be part of an integrated school for the first time. We only had a couple of African Americans at our school at Jesse Rice. And so, I think back on those days, that's pretty much the way it is. When I went from Macon Junior to Mercer, after I got my associate's degree, it's a little intimidating. I didn't know if I could handle Mercer. And then I got over there and found out Macon Junior was way harder than Mercer. This was a piece of cake coming over here to Mercer University. Military, basic training, a job, new jobs, a new promotion, new position at a job. Marriage. There's lots of things in life that we look forward to, exciting, but the journey can be somewhat unfamiliar for these people where it was. And I again think this may be one other reason why God just made clear to manifest his presence clearly, cloud and fire. Also, part of his plan was he knew what the children of Israel could handle and what they couldn't handle at this moment. So he just has manifested these 10 plagues. But look at verse 18 with me, the first part of verse 18 as well. When Pharaoh finally let the people go, he didn't lead them. God did not lead them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the shortest route to the promised land. God said, if the people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led them in a roundabout way. Matter of fact, when you read about the journey and you follow it, it was like a roundabout way. He led them in a roundabout way through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. He knew what they could handle. He knows what you can handle. He knows what I can handle at any moment. He's in the process of moving in the affairs of men. He was moving on Pharaoh's heart while he was navigating what the children of Israel could handle. They weren't battle tested yet and ready. So where the journey may have looked cumbersome and confusing, it was also part of God's plan. Chapter 14, verse 2. As part of this plan, God makes clear. He put the Israelites exactly where he wanted them to be. Verse 2 of chapter 14 reads this way. Order the Israelites to turn back and camp by, I hope I get this right, Pi-Hahiroth and Migdal at the sea. Camp there along the shore across from Baal-Zephon. Literally, he put them in a roundabout way. They circled, they went back, they went over, and then they ended up here. And just to remind you where they end up, to the south of them are Egyptian fortresses, powerful Egyptian fortresses. To the west of them is the Red Sea. They've got the barren desert south of them. And on the east of them, they've got the approaching Egyptian army. So God's led them, just remind you, cloud by day, fire by night. They've left miraculously. They've left with the people of Egypt asking them to bless them. And he's planted them right in the middle of a hard spot. They're in a nook and a cranny with nowhere to go. And just remind you, this is the way God led. Also part of God's plan, and we're getting to the end of this first point. Look at Exodus 14, 3 and 4 with me to be reminded. God says this about why he put the children of Israel where he put them and had them travel the way they traveled. It's not just he didn't think the children of Israel were ready, so he's taking care of his children. So I'll just remind you, while he's taking care of us, he's always taking care of those who might mean us harm. Verse 3, 4, Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused. They are trapped in the wilderness. And once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. He will chase after you. I have planned this. God's plan. I have planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. See, he's not just interested in displaying his glory through us. He can display his glory through the worst in this world. And he's doing it here. After this, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. Verse 4 goes on. So the Israelites camped there as they were told. So God's plan included not just children of Israel, but also Pharaoh. And can I say this carefully and lovingly? Because when you're living this place, it's never so easy. God has a plan. And I have to remind myself of this on occasion. Because this concerns pastors, all of us who walk with him. God loves us. He's merciful, long-suffering, compassionate. He gives needed grace. But hear me. He's way more concerned with getting glory than he is with my comfort and your comfort. And that's why we can be smack dab in the middle of his plan in some uncomfortable places, like the children of Israel. Second point the Lord laid on my heart to share. The pursuit. The Egyptians pursued. Exodus 14, 5 through 9. When the word reached the king of Egypt that the Israelites had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds. What have we done, letting all these Israelite slaves get away, they asked. So Pharaoh harnessed his chariot and called up his troops. He took with him 600 of Egypt's best chariots, along with the rest of the chariots of Egypt, each with its commander. Verse 8, the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So he chased after the people of Israel, who left with fists raised in defiance. The Egyptians chased after them, and all the forces in Pharaoh's army, all his horses. Listen to this. The key word here is all. All his forces, all his horses, chariots, his charioteers, his troops. The Egyptians caught up with the people of Israel as they were camped beside the shore near Hireth, across from Baal-Zephon. Not only does God have them there, God purposely moved on Pharaoh's heart, made them think God's people are lost. They're confused. They don't know what they're doing. That's why they're just stupid Israelites. They don't have a clue. It emboldened them. The third point the Lord laid on my heart to share is the panic. This one always gets my attention until I look at my own heart sometimes. The Israelites panicked. 10 plagues, God's miraculous deliverance, cloud right there, fire right there. They panic. They put their eyes on Pharaoh and off of God. Verse 10, the first part of verse 10. As Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. Why do we do this? When God is so faithful and been so faithful to us. You know why? It happens always. Fear escalates and panic jumps in anytime we take our eyes off God and on whatever. And it's happening here. It always increases. Can I say this carefully? That's why Satan wants our eyes on the pandemic. That's why he wants your ears in front of the news. He wants to keep fear increased and keep fear doubling down and just keep. And this pandemic is a perfect example of how he operates all the time. If he can keep our focus there, we'll take the focus off God. Oh, I want to be aware of how serious this is and be aware of what it is. But in the midst of whatever I'm going through and whatever we're going through as a nation, I want to keep my eyes on God and be reminded He is big enough for it. Nationally, state level, local level, personal level, He is large and in charge. How could they? I've often thought, how could they have a visible cloud by day and a fire by night and panic? All you had to do was look up and see God hadn't gone anywhere. They did. Verse 10, the rest of verse 10 and 12. They cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, why do you bring us here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? These are questions. Are these fair questions? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this has happened when we were in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians. It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in wilderness. They have practiced this so well. This is the first time, but this is not the last time they're going to spew this stuff to Moses. Again, Satan wants us to look everywhere. You know what happens? When we got our eyes off God and we're fearful about whatever, it seems a natural response to cry out to people. The leader, people. The fourth point the Lord laid on my heart is this. In fact, let me just pause here. Can I remind you, they couldn't put this on Moses. Can we agree they couldn't put it on Moses? The Lord has led with a cloud by day and a fire by night. Protection. The fourth thing the Lord laid on my heart is the protection, the Lord's protection. Exodus 13 through 14, Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. Verse 14, the Lord Himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. I didn't give the booth Ephesians 6, just a familiar passage to us in 13 and 14. Put on the full armor of God. And after you have done everything, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you've done everything, stand firm then. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. Just stand. Just stand and let God work. Just stand still, Moses was told to tell them. Great Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I'm God. I didn't get the booth, this verse, so I want you to look at it with me, verse 15 of chapter. Two things. So while he's protected them, he has two things he wants them to do. The first one is here, and I forgot to pass this on. I've got the New King James here. The Lord said to Moses in verse 15, why do you cry out to me? Let me pause here. Cloud by day, fire by night. The Lord's giving Moses direction. People are crying out to Moses, so Moses cries out to God. I'm telling you, if I had $1 for every time I cried out to God because somebody cried out to me, I would be a very rich man. And I wonder if God's really pleased with it all the time. Why do you cry out to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Lift up your rod, stretch it over to sea, he goes on to tell him. Forward's got to seem strange because there's a sea there. You know when we're at our best with God? When we don't let anything keep us from going forward with God. And my experience has been like the children of Israel in this moment. Anytime I'm letting things get on my mind and heart and I got my focus there, many times the best thing to do is just say, hold off, Tim. Nothing needs to happen right now. You don't need to do anything. Stand still. Rest in God. Trust in God. And invariably, clarity comes sooner rather than later. Because why? The Lord always fights for his children. He told the children of Israel to go forward, go toward the sea. And then verse 19 and 20 tell us the second thing, the angel of the Lord. Then the angel of God, who had been leading the people of Israel, moved to the rear of the camp. The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them. The cloud settled behind the Egyptians and the Israelites. So you got the pre-incarnate Christ, the angel of God, and the cloud both get between the Egyptian army and the Israelites. It made the Egyptians not able to see the Israelites, but the Israelites could still see the sea. It kept the Egyptians from being able to attack because they couldn't see. The Israelites couldn't see them, so they were not fearful. They had their focus on where God told them to go, the sea that was in front of them. And when God wants us to see what he's about to do, he wants our focus there rather than what's happening around us, and especially what may have happened behind us. Verse 21 goes on. Then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all that night, turning the seabed into dry land. Can I just pause here? Moses stretched out his hand. Can we agree God didn't need Moses to stretch out his hand to part the Red Sea? So while God has a plan, and part of his plan involves hardening Pharaoh's heart and getting the Egyptians where he wanted them, part of his plan was knowing what the children of Israel could handle. Another part of his plan was he's going to get glory for himself, but in the middle of it, he wants them to see that Moses is his man. Moses is my man. And so he gives Moses the blessing of getting to be the one that God works through. And when God, here we are, y'all. We're not that special. We're mostly special when we're God's men and women and his boys and girls. And when we get out of the way and just let him flow through us, it's an awesome thing that he wants to do through people. It says they went through on dry ground. When Lake Tobersovsky's down like it was this past year, you know what I noticed? It's down usually December this time. I think it's around the 1st of March when it normally goes up. They try to get it back up when before the fish start back. You know what I noticed in my little slough back in our little area back there? It never gets to be dry ground. Never. This is a miracle. Two miracles. One, you got an east wind that puts a wall of water up on both sides. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Dry ground, miracle. It says in verse 22, the people walked across the middle of the sea on dry ground with walls of water on each side. Verse 23 to 25, then the Egyptians, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, charioteers, chased them into the middle of the sea. Just before dawn, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from a pillar of cloud, fire and cloud. He threw their forces into total confusion. He twisted their chariot wheels, making their chariots difficult to drive. Let's get out of here. Let's get away from these Israelites, the Egyptians shouted. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. The Egyptians pursued because God allowed them to see the Egyptians, that the Israelites were escaping, but God put them exactly where he wanted them to be. Because God was fighting for the Israelites then. Can I remind you today, one of the things that concern me, concerning some of the people now in the halls of Congress, some of the voices in our country, God help us. I want to tell you, I want to just remind you of a truth that in a good Bible-believing church like ours, but I want to tell you, folks, God is still fighting for Israel today. They are still his people and dear to his heart. And one of the things that we ought to always do is be extremely careful to be a friend to Israel in this world. It's still true that those who bless this nation, God would choose to bless. And I pray we will always have leaders that are sympathetic to the people of Israel and all that they face, their little sliver of land they have, and all the enemies that are around them. They pursued, God threw them in confusion, made their wheels come off. Matter of fact, you want to do some reading later today? And I'm thinking, man, everybody wants to do some more reading today. Read about the 1967 Egyptian-Israeli War, Yom Kippur War called. 6-day war. Google it. Read a little bit about it. I'm going to tell you, you'll be fascinated with how that little place dominated. Powerful enemies are there to this day. So to this day, I want you to notice that. The reason I want you to look at it, to this day from 1967, there have been little things lobbed over to Israel, but there's been no nation in the Middle East or anywhere that has felt bold enough to traffic across those borders and attack that nation. It was miraculous how God delivered Israel during that war and changed the landscape and the borders in Israel to this day. God destroyed the Egyptian army. Enough time spent there. Let me move to a close. The fifth point is this. The praise is the way I described it. The Israelites' praise. Verse 31. When the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had unleashed against the Egyptians, they were filled with awe before him. They put their faith in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Filled with awe. My New King James says fear. Fear, reverence, awe. It's kind of like when the disciples were in the boat with the Lord and he calmed the sea. Remember how it says they were fearful and realized they were in the presence of a holy one. That's why I say often phrases like this. What a God we serve. God's moved them, led them, put them here in a rock and a hard place. He intently gets their focus off the Egyptians, purposely blocks where they can't see, gets their eyes right where he needs them to be, and then does a miracle of all miracles for them. When they got on the other side, they were in awe, it says, and then it concludes they put their faith and their trust in him. I still believe to this day that's a large part of why God always is out to get glory, so that we can see who he is, what he can do, what he has done. It's my prayer for you and me that we'll keep our trust in the Lord. We'll be reminded who he is and what he can do for us. There's a couple of neat things about this story we'll close with, just these little final thoughts. Again, as I've already alluded, God made a point to make sure Moses was a key figure in all that he did here. It was going to be beneficial for years down the road. Moses is the one that stretched out his hand and the wind blew. Moses is the one who stretched out his hand. We didn't read it. Moses is the one that stretched out his hand. And when God let the waters come back over the people of Egypt and the armies of Pharaoh, God is good. The story reminds me a few things here. That God is always in control of everything. He protected and provided And while he takes care of his own, just remind you, he always is taking care of those who would mean us harm. I want to interject here again. Let's don't worry about fighting our battles. I think that's one reason why Paul kept emphasizing our battles are not against flesh and blood. They're against principalities and powers in high places. Let's let God do the fighting. He knows best what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And this story reminds us he is worthy of our faith and our worship and our trust. 3 last things. The best place to look when in a challenging place is where? It's up. Fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The second, if the Lord is to get the glory, if the Lord is to get the glory, he's got to be the one to do the fighting. Sometimes some of the people I respect a lot on TV, from the Christian world viewpoint, I mean solid Christians, sometimes when they're on shows and this and that, I sometimes wish, don't go there. Stay off that show. Let God handle that. Even the best of people are not at our best, I think, when we always feel like we got to do the fighting. Let God do the fighting. He knows when hearts need to be melted. He knows when hearts need to be hard, because it's part of his plan. And we're at our best when we recognize, as bad as this, whatever this is may be, it is not lost on God. And he will fight for his children. The third and last point is this. And this one is the hardest one for me. They're all a challenge. Red Seas open and close at the Lord's command, and not until. He's a miracle God. He's a way-making God. But he chooses to do these things in his time and in his plan, not ours. I pray you, like me, will have the grace to wait until he views it's his time to open a door, close a door, fix a problem, and deal with a problem, people, or maybe even a problem situation. Amen? This is a familiar story. I hope going through it in this much detail has not been too much on you. It's been a good reminder of how wonderful our great God works. How he worked here with this great 2 million plus Israelites he's navigating to this place, getting them here. He can handle our family, my situation, your situation, this country. He can handle it. We're at our best when we get our eyes off X and keep them on God. Amen? That's my prayer. That would be your heart to do that this morning. I'm going to ask you to stand if you would. Pray with you before we go. Father, I love you. Thank you for these familiar stories that when we look a little closer remind us of some timeless truths concerning you. Your sovereignty humbles me, amazes me. How you can choose to be this powerful and sovereign and still give us so much freedom and choices, movement, is humbling. We love you supremely. We've never regretted a day that we walked with you. I pray for any in this place this morning that are walking in a particularly challenging spot. Remind them, Father, that you are with them, that you never leave us or forsake us. We may not be privileged to have a cloud and a fire, but we have learned how beautiful it is to have the witness of the Spirit in our heart and life. I pray as we go here today, we will sense that presence. And those that not, Father, I pray it will be quickly, soon, that we want to be at a place of prayer with you, knowing and making sure all is well between them and you is my prayer. Go with us in your grace and under your care is my prayer in Christ's name. And all God's people said, amen. God bless you, church. Leanne.